For those that have not met us before, I'm Robin Bennett, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Dog Gurus. And then
The other co-founder.
Susan Briggs, the other co-founder. And we are happy to join. So we thought we would talk today about the things that you need to have in place before you even start to interview people. And I think most of us just like to jump right into, let's get some people in the door so we can fill out our staff, and they don't think about all the steps of the process. So I'll just kick it off. We do have some folks joining us. So great. Cynthia's here and Sabina's here. So we know that we're being heard. So that's always good. What do you want to kick it off with though, Susan?
Some of the things you need to have in place, because you want to hire, the hiring we're talking about is finding people that's going to stick with you and that are looking for careers versus just jobs. Now, in your business, I think you'll always have a few people that it's just a job, but to reduce turnover and actually get those people, what we like to say, your A-team players that are looking for careers, you want to hire for people that align with your mission and vision and culture of your company and the core values. So you need to make sure that's up to date and clear, and that you can communicate what that looks like, what the values look like in practice on your team. So I would say that's the first place to start.
And I'll jump in to say, I think that a lot of pet care facilities that we work with, we ask them, what's your main vision? Like, what sets you apart? And I don't want to make fun of people, but like everybody tells us pretty much the same thing, which is we take good care of the pets. We love your pets. We have personalized attention for your pets. And I'm going to say all of those things are great, but they are differentiators, because there are a lot of really not so good daycare and boarding facilities out there. But basically having good care of the pets should be what Susan and I would consider pay to play. That's a bare minimum you should have. So what is it beyond that? Like, a lot of times that goes back to, what is the reason you actually started your business, and understanding that the why behind why you got started. And it's not just, nobody got started just because I think I want to take good care of the pets. There's a bigger story there. And it might be that for so many people that we talk to, it's because something happened with their pet and they needed a really good place to put them, and there was no place that they thought they would trust. And that is the why behind their story. For other people, it's because they love rescue and they wanted to get involved so that they could generate revenue and help their rescue organization through their business. And the nonprofit side of their company is a huge part of why they're in a for-profit business. So there's something behind why you started, and that something needs to come out. What does make you different? Why should I bring my dog to your facility versus any other facility? And great care certainly should be a part of that. But I would venture to say there's probably something even deeper that you can get to. And that story, that why, needs to be out there. It needs to be on your website. It needs to be core to what your staff knows about your business. It needs to be what you're telling new people that are coming into your business. So it's really critical. And if you haven't ever really sat down and worked that out for your business, then it's worth taking a day of really just hashing that out and coming up with a really good story behind your why.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And especially for millennials, they get a bad rap, but they can be really good workers if they feel passionate about your story, your vision, and your mission of what you're doing with your company, because they want to be a part of something bigger than just having a job and taking great care of pets. They need to understand that story and that why. And a lot of them will get very passionate behind that. And you'll find they are really good workers on your team when they align and feel like they're working for something bigger.
Yeah, so I think that's the very first document that we would say put together before you start hiring, is that really the why behind your business, the vision and mission that you have for your business. And that's what's going to have people applying that want to align with that. And that's what you want to look for. And that's what keeps people from just coming in. And when people ask us, why would someone work for my company when they can make more flipping burgers at McDonald's, or they can make more? Well, that's why. If you don't have a vision behind what you're doing, then all you are doing is just giving them a place to earn a paycheck. But you want to be giving them more than that through your vision and mission. And we do find, and even the dog owners, we hired a consultant to help us do this for our own company, because it's not something that I think everybody thinks through and writes down when they start their business. It usually, the longer you're in business, I think sometimes the farther you can drift from that original purpose. So reminding yourself, what was that original reason I got started
Mhm.
in this business, is really important.
And sometimes it's hard to brag on yourself and what you do that's really special, which is why sometimes having an outside person help you do this can be beneficial. So, yeah. So then the next thing I think about is the kind of legal documents, which would be the employee handbook and job descriptions. So the employee handbook talks about the policies and hiring and employment policies of your business, which is dictated by, in part by federal law, part by state and local, but also by your own brand and business policies for what your expectations are for employees. And that's real important to have in writing and that you can share with them. And the most important are up-to-date job descriptions. Someone needs to know, what are my responsibilities and the skills and knowledge I need to do this job. And some of it you may train them to get, but putting in there that you expect them to master that to keep that job and to be able to move up into different career positions are really important.
And we do have a lot of people that will multitask and multi-train their employees, especially when you're first starting. Like, you're just hiring someone to help with everything. Let's be honest. But you still want to write job descriptions for the particular position. And they may be filling multiple positions. So that is true. But over time, you want to actually develop those positions so they're all standalone positions and you have job descriptions for each one. So even if you're going to hire someone to be like the jack of all trades, because maybe you're a smaller facility and this is like your first or second hire and they literally do need to be able to do everything, you still need a job description that it shows them what success looks like for their job. And that's really the way to look at the job description. Is it's a way of telling that new employee what success looks like. If you don't have a job description, then they don't really have anything to even gauge what they're doing against. And they also don't know what is expected of them when they take the job on. So you really want to make sure that job description lists the basic overall categories of what they're going to be doing. They're going to be cleaning kennels, or they're going to be working with the dogs, or they are going to be working up on the front desk with customers. What do those things look like? And then you also want to put down what skills they need in order to do that. And working with clients at the front desk, the skills are communication skills. They need to have communication skills. Or you might say communication skills are highly recommended. And then I would be looking for people that can show you they've got those skills. They've got that experience in another job, or they've gotten training in that somehow, so that you want to have all that stuff match. And because again, that's the gauge for whether or not someone actually fits the role that you're hiring them for. If they're going to be working with the dogs in daycare, then experience with canine body language is great. And yes, you can teach them that, but it is a skill that you might say, if they have this, you're going to have a better chance of getting the job. So we know a lot of people, Susan and I were just talking about this the other day. We know a lot of people that have done the Knowings Dogs program. And if I were someone that had taken that program at one facility and I was going to apply at another facility, I would definitely tell them that, because if you're applying for another job where you need canine body language, having that background is going to help you, hopefully, to make an impression on whoever's hiring you. If they're going to be working in the kennel, then doing cleaning, you might think they don't really need to know anything, but they do. They need to be able to follow instructions. They need to be attention to detail, I think, is really important. And being able to understand why cleanliness is so important. Some of that, again, you can teach them, but you need to match up all those tasks with the skills and the knowledge that are required for that task. And then that's going to help you lay out your job description, but it's also going to help what you should be looking for in terms of finding the right candidate too, when you're interviewing.
Absolutely. And it'll save your frustration, because we hear from a lot of business owners that they get frustrated with their staff not doing what they're supposed to do. And your job description details that. So that's kind of part of your accountability document, as is your employee handbook. So those are, I guess we're down to three different things you need to have. And then what I would say next is to have a formal hiring process. And I went back to our library today, Robin, and I found that we actually in
Yeah.
2014 outlined a 5-step hiring process. And it was fun to read back through that. It's still applicable, I think. But you do want to have your hiring process standardized, interview questions standardized, and they will probably vary by role exactly how you do this. So I'm just going to go through our 5 steps real quick, and then Robin, I'll let you talk about whatever kind of jumps out at you. The first thing we had was doing resume review to eliminate obvious poor matches. Then we were doing an email screening process, which basically gauge the candidate's desire to pursue the opportunity and follow instructions, giving them an extra either answer some questions or do something in a request for email. And I thought today that might be via text and not email. That kind of
Yeah.
back to 2014. Then the third step was a phone interview to assess that verbal communication skills, passion for pet care, and initial fit to culture and position. Then we had a face-to-face interview to where you get that more in-depth standard, what we think about asking our set of interview questions, work history, culture fit, and then a working interview. And I think this was really important when we were talking about working in the daycare, but I think it applies to all roles, but especially how do they interact with the dogs? Are they interested in learning about dog behavior, or do they ask any questions? And can they perform some basic tasks during the interview? So those were our 5 steps to the hiring process we had outlined and is in our library.
And then when you're looking at those steps, and for every facility, this might be a little bit different, but the bottom line is you want to have that process documented. You know what it looks like to hire somebody, and your team knows because they might get involved with some of it. They might be involved, obviously, if there's a working interview, some of your staff are going to interact with this person who's coming in for the working interview. You might have more than one person. You might have one person do the phone interview and someone else do the actual interview, but you want to just map that out. The other thing I would say within that 5-step process is figure out the timeline you want. And we tend to back chain everything. So we figure out the end result and then we back up from there. So if your end result is you want to hire someone that's going to begin, let's say on June 1st, then how many days do you need before the working interview? How many days do you need before you talk to them on the phone or you bring them in for an in-person interview? How many days do you need before you review their resume? How many days do you need to send out the job application? So by the time you add all that up, it could be a month. It might be 2 weeks. You might be able to fast track it, and then figuring that once you offer someone a job, oftentimes if they're working somewhere else, they need to give 2 weeks notice. So you have to build that in. So you want to figure out what that timeline looks like for you. And this is one of the reasons, because that lead time could be a long time. This is actually one of the reasons that both Susan and I took resumes all the time. And so once we knew our job positions, if someone walked in or if we saw somebody out in like at a restaurant that was a super good customer person, I might just say, hey, if you're ever looking for a job, we're hiring over at my company or whatever. But we would take resumes all the time. It didn't necessarily mean we would hire right then, but that helps to reduce some of the time that you might have to build into your hiring process. But you want to have that whole process mapped out. And then the only part of the process we're focusing on right now and that most people think about is the process for who is getting hired. So like that one person that you see that you want to interview and you bring them in and they actually really impress you and you want to offer them a job and you get them on board. The other people you have to think about is everyone else that applies. So what's the process for finding you usually will have the process for finding the people you want. You have a process that says, oh, all of these, I got these 12 resumes. I only want to talk to 2 of them. And you probably have that process to reach out to those 2. And then of those 2, you probably have a process to reach out to them and bring them in for the phone interview or the working interview. And then you probably have a process to say, okay, this is the one I want. But what happens to the other 11? You have to have a process for that too. So for the 12 people that apply and you're going to talk to 2 of them, you have to also create a process to thank the other 10 for applying, but let them know that they're not in the running, because otherwise they don't know, and that doesn't really reflect well on your business if you just leave them hanging or you don't get back to them at all. And so you have to have that process too for what are you doing to people who you might not want to interview, and that has to be built out too. And the good thing is most of this stuff can be standardized, so it's a matter of creating the template, and then it doesn't necessarily even have to be you as the business owner sending those. You can, if you have an administrative assistant or someone that's working the front desk, you can say, hey, these people we need to send these emails to, and you have a template and they just send them. But you have to build out the entire process before you hire people, because it's going to make everything a lot better, a lot smoother, and your company be on the much more professional side of things in terms of hiring as well.
Absolutely.
So Valerie said, Al, that is Al Bowman. I just know that, first of all. Yeah, earlier it says Al just checked in, although he's under Valerie's name. He says, of course, they're a successful hedge fund manager. Yeah, that's a good collateral duty, is if you have like that person working for you. All right, Barb said, what tasks do you expect with a person working with the dogs?
It depends on what that role is. It would be different for someone who's maybe taking care of lodging dogs for me versus people that are leading play groups. So sometimes you have to get even more specific about what that means. So I would think about the knowledge and skills. I want them to know breeds. I would want them to know canine body language. If they're leading play groups, they need to understand appropriate play behaviors, inappropriate play, and how to intervene. If they're taking care of lodging dogs, they need to know what a healthy dog looks like and what are signs of illness or disease. Lodging dogs also, I would want them to be able to engage and do activities. Can they get a dog to play, and not just the dogs that like to play fetch? Can they get other dogs to play? Health and well-being, what's appropriate enclosures? What are signs of stress? What are signs of aggression, so that they keep themselves safe? And appropriate ways to handle, put on collars and leashes, appropriate ways to walk dogs on loose leash. There's a long list. We went through this when we created Knowing Dogs, and then we last year put out Pet Guru College, and we had you'd be surprised how long the list was of the knowledge and skills that people needed to do their job. And that's where you have to start, is what do they need to know to understand dogs? We also want them to understand puppies versus seniors versus juveniles, and those different stages dogs go through. I think we underestimate what our knowledge is and what we expect, and then sometimes that leads to frustration as to why we don't think people do the job the way we want them to, and we underestimate that skills and knowledge we want them to have. And that's just on the dog side. I also want them to be able to communicate and work as a team. And if you want them, as Robin said, to also deal with clients, that's additional skills. And I think sometimes we do go too broad, and finding that star that has all of that knowledge and skills for one job is like finding a diamond in a coal mine. And so sometimes that's why setting up narrower job descriptions can be useful as you grow and get bigger in your business.
Yeah, and I would say that if you're probably not going to find that person who has every single one of those right off the bat. So if you think back to what I was talking about with the job description, where the job description says, here's the tasks and here's the knowledge and skills the person has to have. And then most of the time when you're doing applications, you're going to say whether that skill and knowledge is required or experience is helpful or that kind of thing. There's some jobs you apply for and it'll say you absolutely have to know XYZ. And then there's other jobs you'll apply for where it'll say XYZ experience preferred, which means you don't necessarily have to have it, but it's helpful if you do. And so that's the stuff that you can talk to people to find out, do they have any experience in understanding dogs or understanding canine body language, or have they ever had training and that kind of thing. But if they haven't, then there is a way to teach that. And we talked in our last Facebook Live about the fact that I would look for the soft skills, so to speak, the communication, kindness. Are you nice to people? Are you teachable? Do you want to learn? I would look for those skills. And if I would value a person that has those skills, even if they don't have the technical skills, because I can teach them the technical skills. As Susan said, all of that stuff that she just mentioned, there's a way to teach all of that canine body language stuff and all of the health and safety and breeds and all that. I can't really, if you're not nice, you're probably just not going to be nice. So I don't want to teach that stuff. I want to hire people that fit with my culture already, that fit with my team, that fit with my vision. And then if they have dog skills, that's great. If they've got some canine body language history, that's even better. But if they don't, I would rank the people who are teachable and kind above the person that is not teachable and is mean, that has a lot of knowledge about dogs. That I wouldn't hire that person. So it's also that understanding, what you're looking for, and then what you absolutely want for someone to walk in your door versus what you can teach. And a lot of the competence stuff, which we talked about on our last Facebook Live, a lot of that you can teach, but you do still have to understand what it is. So Barb asked, wait, where is it? No, Cynthia asked, do you offer a template for delivering the bad news? I don't think we have that template. Do we, Susan?
No.
Just looking through our library really quick, but
yeah, I don't remember that. But usually what I do is try to keep it positive, that we thank you for your application, and we had a great number of respondents, and the ones that we chose to go to the next step were in a better alignment with our company and what we're looking for. And if you are going to keep the resume on file, you could add that in and say, if we have another opening, we'll reach back out. Or if it's someone that's never going to fit, I wouldn't even put that in there. I would just thank them for their interest and wish them luck in their job hunting. I would keep it pretty short, but just keep it positive as far as that there were other applicants that were a better fit.
So in our library, if you're a member of the library, we do have a lot of tools on various subjects. There's a whole category on staff hiring and training. And there's one document in there that is like all the best practices from a whole bunch of other facilities. It's 60 some pages. Mm-hmm. And that includes job description, it includes interview questions, it includes sample ideas for all kinds of interview process steps. So that is in there. So if you are a member of the library, if you go to, hang on, I got to back up because I just went to it. If you go to the hiring and evaluating staff area on the dashboard, and then when you get there, it's on the right-hand side are all the key documents for that category. So there's documents on hiring high performers, employee performance checklist, knowledge and skills checklist, leadership exercises, and then there's one that says hiring ideas from the Dog Guru members. And that's just a consolidation of a whole bunch of best practices that other facilities are using. So that's that. But let me see, there was another question. So where do you suggest, we did not ask, I don't know, Facebook is not letting me do stuff or Be Live is not letting me do the stuff I normally am able to do, but okay, there. Barb said, so where do you suggest going to get all these skills? That's a loaded question because we did not tell Barb to ask us that, but we do, the Dog Gurus actually does have staff training programs, both Knowing Dogs as well as Pet Guru College. Knowing Dogs is our flagship program that has been around for years now. We created that after we wrote the book Off Leash Dog Play. Susan and I wrote that book together to help understand canine body language. And then lots and lots of people kept telling us we needed to turn that into a training program, which we ended up doing. And that's Knowing Dogs. And that program is an online program to teach your staff about canine body language. Knowing Dogs 101 is for everybody in your facility. It teaches stress signals, early warning signs of aggression, how to greet a dog, how to understand how to interact around a dog. That whole program is geared towards keeping people safe and keeping the dog safe, no matter who's interacting with the dog. And then Knowing Dogs 201 is all about canine body language understanding in a group play. So for your daycare staff, we would recommend Knowing Dogs 201 as well, because that teaches them how to intervene safely, knowing when to intervene, knowing the early warning signs that happen within groups playing. And so that's also canine body language as well. And then I'll let you talk about Pet Guru College.
Right. Last year, we decided that we wanted to expand beyond Knowing Dogs, that there were other things successful daycare counselors, lodging counselors needed to know. And so we set up training by role. So basically, We included what does a healthy pet look like? What are signs of disease? What are critical conditions that need veterinarian care? How do you safely house and walk? So, Pet Guru College is really set up to be the training program from the day they're hired. We included soft skills of how to be a good teammate, as well as the communication course for pet care professionals, as well as knowing dogs is in there based on the role, what part of it they needed. The training is based on role and could be as short as 4 weeks for a seasonal counselor, as long as I think 10 weeks is the longest one, which is the daycare counselor.
And I just did put a link in the chat box to our membership page, and that membership page will talk about the differences between the library, Knowing Dogs, and Pet Guru College. Each membership grows. So the library is a standalone membership that gives you access to a lot of tools and resources from that we put together over a 5-year period. So there's a lot of blogs and tools and resources for just on the library. And we recommend that for smaller facilities that don't have a big team yet. Knowing Dogs is actually our staff training program. It includes the library. And then Pet Guru College includes the library and Knowing Dogs. So they build as you go up. So you can learn more about that. Okay, we don't normally talk about all that, but since Bob asked that question. Other places to learn, though, about canine body language specifically is, and there's a lot of videos out there now that we oftentimes will just go to YouTube and pull videos off. If you just Google dogs playing, you'll get all kinds of horrendous, not so great videos that are actually not dogs playing maybe, but that aren't really good either. So it's really good for continuing education to use that kind of stuff. There's also some really good books out there. Sue Sternberg has a lot of videos on canine body language. Sarah Kolnius has a lot of videos on canine body language. And they're more geared towards this just understanding stress in dogs and understanding how to read dogs. There's some apps now that are available on understanding dogs. So there's a lot of resources out there just on understanding and reading dog body language. Ours is obviously geared towards the pet professional and the stuff that you're most likely to see in a pet facility. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there now. All right, what else do we need to talk about? I think I got all the questions.
Okay. I think the other thing that would be good to have once you have your interview process formalized, and that's from posting the job to getting the resume in, and if you're going to do like a text or email task, phone interview, face-to-face interview, and working interview, having all that documented and the questions that you're going to ask at each place laid out for you, I would do those standard questions. One thing I've used in the past is a standard assessment form to help put, of course, this is my analytical mind rather than making it subjective. I like to make it an objective choice, but then sometimes it comes back to being subjective. But just to go through and to make notes and score different candidates along the way so that I could hire the top person. But I think what we talk about is that career path. What does the organization chart for your business look like? And what is that career path? And making that clear, because if you really want 18 players that want a career in pet care, they want to know, how can I grow? What's next for me? What do I need to learn to grow, make more money, but also have more responsibility and really have a career? And you can't have a career if you just have one role.
Yeah, and I think that we've seen that time and time again, that people who have staff that are staying longer periods of time, because it is possible to get staff that are with you 5, 6, 7 years. And we've started to see that in a lot of facilities, as opposed to this revolving door, like I'm hiring every 6 months. You're always going to hire occasionally, but we are seeing facilities that are very successful in maintaining people for a longer period of time. And those facilities typically have some kind of a growth path in place and a way for that employee to improve themselves and improve what they're doing for the business. And obviously there's usually a monetary component, but I will tell you, the monetary component is usually not the most important component. Yeah. That we see all the time. People are not leaving jobs because you're not paying them enough. They're leaving jobs because either the job itself, either they literally are like, this is not what I want to do, or they're like, this business is not fun to work here and I don't get treated well and they don't value me. And so you have to build all of that into your whole hiring process and your whole culture, really. The facilities that I would say have the highest turnover, like on a routine basis that can't get anyone to stay for long periods of time are usually the ones that could work on their culture a lot more, because it's just not a good place to work. And we all know that, right? Like we've probably all either know somebody, or maybe it's yourself, that you've worked somewhere where you're like, I don't want to work here anymore. And so don't be that company. So you want to really work on that too. And that takes time to build that up as well. So there was a question, Maria was asking, do you have a handbook template? I have your handbook guide. So we have a couple of things that can be useful. One is the employee development guide, which I'll let Susan talk about. And then we also have, Susan mentioned earlier, standard operating procedures. We do have a template for that. Those are two different documents. So the SOPs are really for after you bring your team on, and those are the standard operating procedures for how they do their job. So this is what it takes to do whatever they need to do. Every aspect of your business should be documented in some kind of a process document. And that's our operating procedure manual, standard operating procedure manual. So we do have a template for that. That's about 99 pages. It's a Word document. So you download it, and then you have that shell that you start with. And then obviously you edit it to whatever your specific facility standards are. And then do you want to talk about the employee handbook also, Susan?
Yeah, that document we set up to be a guide with links. It basically, we provided links to go out to get templates for your specific state or province, because that changes, and the legal aspect all changes, and there's templates that are kept up to date. But what we include in our guide are kind of the pet care template sections that wouldn't be in a standard guide. So you have both in the handbook guide.
Yeah,
and that's the employee, what's required to be an employee.
Yeah, and so those are two different. We use those terms different. Not everybody does, but there's the employee side of things, which is here's what it takes to be employee. Here's what your benefits are. Here's, what your grievance process is if you don't like the way something's happening. Here's our policies for whatever you have in terms of, maybe you have a social media policy or whatever. Like all of that stuff, employee handbook covers what governs the employees and what is their expectation as a member of your team. And so that's one document. The other document, the operating procedures, is this is how you do your job. So that has nothing to do with like your employee benefits or anything. That's just, here's how you clean the kennels. Here's how we manage dogs. Here's the expectations for what we do if dogs are barking or whatever. So they are two different documents, and you want to have both of them, but you definitely want to have the employee information prior to when you hire someone, because they're going to need to know what are the requirements to be an employee, or even a contractor if you're hiring them that way. But you want to make sure that they understand what their benefits are, how they get paid, what's the process for that, what if they don't like something, what's the process to make a complaint about something. So all of that stuff needs to be ironed out or fleshed out before. And as Susan said, that is very much dictated in some states or countries. It's dictated by your state or your city or your province. So you can't, there's not a one size fits all for that. So we give you links to help you create that document. So hopefully that makes sense. All right. I think we've covered everything we were going to cover, Susan. What else do you want to talk about in terms of what you need to do before you get ready to interview anybody?
I think just having that clarity with your team as to what that expectation is to be a good team member and to fit in. We talked about that in our last Facebook Live, is really important. But I think you said it, and I just want to reemphasize, plan ahead, because this can take time. And what we're hearing is good news, is that bookings are up. And so if bookings are up now and you keep seeing that grow, you're going to need to be hired. And you don't want to be in that place where you're feeling like, I just need a body, because that's when the body isn't going to work out. So you've got to allow yourself the time to go through the process and find that right person. But you want to act quickly if you do find them, because good people are going to get jobs quickly in this market as things start opening back up.
Yeah. And I would be looking at, so it's March right now, like the beginning of March. And I would be looking at summer, hopefully we are opening up and summer is going to start getting busy. Certainly it's going to be busier than last year. I'm just 100% sure I can say that. But you need to get those staff in now. Like, it is not too early to start this whole process to get people on board so that you can train them so that they've got some minimum skills for when the busier summer season picks up. And so that I would start this process now if you haven't started building it already, and just take time to really sit down and get all these documents together so that you can hit the ground running. And all of this is going to help you bring in a better quality person who is going to fit your culture better and hopefully stay with you longer. So that's the goal. If you wait to the last minute, as Susan said, you're just going to be throwing whatever out there, accepting whoever comes in. And we've all gone through that before. It just, long term, it generally doesn't work. So
And
just,
it costs you money. We have found in our research that every entry level position that turns over probably costs you at a minimum $4,000. And so it's worth spending time, and think about how long you could pay them to be there and get trained and still not spend $4,000. So I think we really underestimate the impact of staff turnover and just throwing a body at a problem and what that really costs your business.
yeah. So definitely that we do have resources in our store. You're welcome to go there, but you can also Google and find a lot of resources as well. So don't, underestimate the power of the internet in terms of helping you with some of this. But we just want to give you the background and kind of the feedback to say, don't forget about all these things you need to have in place before you even start the hiring process, because that's where we see most people start the hiring process and then they're backpedaling because they don't have this other stuff. So we're trying to flip that.